COVID may have paused glad-handing, but politicians still walk their wards and test their plans.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Toronto City Councillor Josh Matlow proposing to take 10%, some $100 million off the police budget and move it.
Defunding?
Yeah, I'm putting it towards the community. Thank you.
Yeah. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
And then put money towards youth spaces, helping de-escalate issues,
Absolutely.
youth workers, social support.
I do agree with that. The funding in order to redivert the money. That's what it's about.
This is Matlow's version of defunding the police, not dissolving the force, reallocating funds. In Toronto, nearly a quarter of all property taxes in the city go to the police budget, and the City Council has no oversight on how it's spent from there. Matlow wants that changed too.
I'm hearing councillors in Ottawa and across the country starting to speak up. Vancouver just spoke up, and they were actually rejected by their police services board. But I'm seeing a movement happen now that we're either going to listen and act or lose this opportunity to affect real change.
It's wrenching to see so many millions on the street rage about anti-black racism ignited by yet another act of brutality and call this an opportunity. But this feels like a unique moment.
What we're seeing is, I think, a global questioning of the role of police in our societies, and that's something that to me is incredibly powerful.
Robin Maynard authored Policing Black Lives, and when she looks at the budget in Toronto, she's bothered not just by what goes to police, but by how little goes to housing, employment, or children's programs.
You can really see the priorities of a society and of a city in terms of what and who they think is important. Public money is going towards an institution that has been documented to harm people and drastically underfunding anything that would actually support people's quality of life. 70% of police killings over the last 20 years are people who are in mental health crisis. That in Toronto, over a third of those people are Black. We need to understand that the adequate response to these crises is not police.
So what could alternatives look like?
You don't need somebody showing up with a badge and a gun. You need somebody who you can talk to.
A different path might look like the 30-year-old program in Eugene, Oregon called Cahoots. Teams of unarmed medics and crisis workers who now handle 17% of all calls to police.
And so last year, Cahoots responded to almost 24,000 calls in our community. There were less than 150 situations where things escalated to the point that we had to call for police backup.
To be on call, to always de-escalate, to get people the medical or housing or psychological help they need is hard work. But crisis workers like Ebony Morgan are clear-eyed about why this matters.
When I was 5 and my father was 25, he was murdered by the police. What draws me to this work is that it is an alternative to police response in a world that so desperately needs that.
Officials from Victoria and Toronto have been in touch with Cahoots, and other U.S. cities are experimenting with it.
People know that we are not a threat. We are only there to help.
Where once this program might have seemed like an outlier, it's getting a second look, as are all calls to re-examine the role of police. This is perhaps the intersection of a global call for action in the middle of a pandemic. All budgets in this era will have to be revisited, programs reimagined, and a core question asked: why try to go back to normal when normal wasn't working?